Members representing the minority party in the legislature do not set the agenda, may not have their bills heard, and cannot by themselves stop a bill from moving forward. But they do perform an essential role in lawmaking by highlighting their point of view and raising important questions about proposed legislation. Joining me to talk about the priorities of the Senate DFL caucus is Minority Leader Melisa López. Franzen, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
As you know, the state is sitting on an enormous surplus of almost $8 billion, and an early effort has emerged with bipartisan support that would replenish the Unemployment Insurance Trust Fund, which was decimated due to the pandemic. If this doesn't happen, Minnesota businesses will see a tax increase. Is your caucus willing to support this as a standalone bill?
Well, Shannon, it's a very important issue, and as a small business owner myself, I understand it intimately, and I understand that large businesses and small businesses have a different impact when it comes to unemployment insurance. We just passed the bill out of the Finance Committee, which I sit on. It had the full DFL support in that committee. There's certainly some questions of whether this is the right priority to start the session with. We still have frontline workers that we have not fulfilled our promise from last session, so we think that that's a priority, and we'll see that play out on the floor. It's not that we don't want to support our small businesses, it's that we want to make sure that we also support workers who we already made a promise to that we were going to support their hero pay. That was at the tune of $250 million last session, so we need to do that first, and we certainly want to support our businesses, and you'll see a lot of Democrats supporting that too.
So more negotiations to come on that topic.
Absolutely.
Related to the surplus, the Senate Republicans would like to see tax cuts, including the removal of the tax on Social Security income. Your caucus is also in favor of tax relief, and in a press release, it, quote, responsible tax cuts for families, seniors, and small businesses. What kind of tax relief is your caucus interested in?
Well, our caucus actually voted on the record completely in support of reducing or eliminating the Social Security tax cut last session. We all voted for it. The Republicans voted against it. It was a biennium budget year where we actually could fund the 2-year cycle of our budget. They decided not to prioritize that, and now they want to do it in a policy bonding year where we can't afford to do permanent tax cuts because we won't know how the tails or the off years will go. I actually supported the bill. I was chief author of the bill as well. So there is a record that the DFL wants to eliminate that tax. It's a question of permanent tax cuts right now could not be sustained without having the full picture of our budget. There's certainly room for tax cuts. We talked about the working family tax credit, which is for working Minnesotans who are struggling the most with inflation. Costs, housing supports, property tax supports, and other supports like child care tax credits that we know that families are struggling with those high costs of child care and other day-to-day bread and butter issues like cost of fuel and cost of groceries. So we want to make sure that we hit those who are struggling the most first.
Okay. Finding ways to prevent crime and improve public safety is a huge topic this session. The Senate Republicans are proposing measures to improve police recruitment and retention. You have talked about preventing crime through proven investments, I'm quoting you, that involve mental health, programs for teens, and community policing. Is it an either or a both and?
And we can do both. And we've done some strides in proven intervention strategies for youth. We know, at least in my district, I represent Edina, we had 3 carjackings in a period of about a month. I've talked to my chief as late as today to understand what can we do to support them. We talk about retention and recruitment. That's important, but it's not going to solve the issue. Right now, the force of Edina Police is 57. They're only having 4 openings, some of them due to retirements, unlike Minneapolis, which has 190 openings. So we know that not every district has that struggle, but we want to support our law enforcement. My dad was a cop. My father-in-law was a cop as well. I understand the sacrifice and how we need to respect this profession and attract good folks to the profession. But we also need to see it comprehensively, right? Holistically, that we want to make sure that people have their mental health supports, their housing supports, their basic needs met. And a lot of what you're seeing in crime is due to that, and making sure that people go back and families have the supports to send their kids to school safely. Quite frankly, the pandemic has had a big impact on the anxiety in our communities, and we need healthy communities. So how do we do that? It's not just dumping money and changing sentencing. It's really looking at the whole person and the whole family, and that's what the Democrats are going to do.
Paid family and medical leave is a program that is already available to workers in large corporations and also people who work for state government. The DFL has pushed for many years to try to make this benefit available to all workers. It's part of your platform now. Why is now the time?
Well, I think people understand the time of leave, of having the ability to take care of their sick kids, whether they're quarantining or whether a family member is sick, old or young. And during this pandemic, everyone's felt that pain. And some people have the advantage of having those programs. Other people have had to quit jobs, have had to, and without unemployment, they've had to make tough decisions and have really struggled. So we want to make sure we have that safety net available, and it would work just as similar as unemployment insurance. We pay a payroll tax. The governor's talked about it. It's going to cost about a cup of coffee, I think, a week. So I think we need to talk about it. It is an important platform, I think, a safety net for moving forward and withholding any or withstanding any other pandemic in the future, God forbid. But we need to talk about it, and I think there's a way to do that, especially when we're talking about a huge surplus. It's a great opportunity for us to really set us up for success in the future.
Access to affordable childcare, or even access to childcare at all, has become enormously challenging across the state. It's a complex issue. It involves a labor shortage, it involves low wages, it involves structural barriers. What can the legislature do to help families get childcare?
Well, as you know, I have a 5- and a 6-year-old, so I've been through it really recently, and they're starting to go into the K-12 system. But childcare is extremely expensive, and Minnesota is one of the most expensive places in the country. It's the top 3, top 5. The other piece too, the workforce shortage because of the pandemic has really exacerbated. We need to professionalize the profession. I've had bills in the past, and our caucus supports tax credits for childcare workers, for the providers, and for the families that are paying those exorbitant costs. A lot of our paycheck goes to taking care of our kids, and we want to have the greatest supports and the greatest people in that industry, but we have to attract new workers. And I think the pandemic, if we focus on ending it by proven strategies to end the pandemic, but also supporting the worker shortage, and how do we attract good workers to help us with the achievement gap.
Yeah, which leads actually perfectly into my next question, because we're talking about a labor shortage, and it's in childcare, it's in nursing and long-term care, it's in policing in some parts of the state, it's in teaching. These are jobs that people do not to get rich, but to give back to their communities. So how can the legislature incentivize people to go into those lines of work?
Well, we have a role to play. We can't say we're going to fix it all with one bill, but we're going to try. And things that we can do, for instance, on the PCA programs and the personal care attendants that are taking care of our most vulnerable and our seniors, people with disabilities. The governor did an emergency CNA training, which stands for Certified Nurse Assistant. He activated the National Guard. That's a Band-Aid. We need to fix it permanently. How do we do that? By other programs like similar to that one in terms of training and retraining and reskilling, but also the pay. The pay in those jobs is below the minimum wage. It's actually not sustainable for people to have a living, and it's mostly immigrants and mothers, single moms are the workers in those areas. And we want to make sure people have good care, so we have to take care of those workers as well. So we need to change the rate, which is completely at the hands of the legislature, and support those workers by giving them the training and supports that they need. Again, when we talk about housing and other basic needs, we have to look at the whole person.
And finally, before we go, the one place where the minority vote does matter is the bonding bill. This is a bonding year. What projects are essential to the DFL?
Well, it's a historic point in time in Minnesota. We can call it the Minnesota moment, because we have a historic surplus. We have a bonding bill that we can really leverage the infrastructure that we need to preserve state assets. Plus, we have the Biden infrastructure bill coming in from the federal government. So I think we need to look and see what's the biggest bang for our buck, but certainly take advantage of this opportunity to make it as large as we can, that's responsible for our taxpayers, but that puts Minnesota again on the great path to recovery.
Minority Leader Melisa López Franzen, thank you so much.
Thank you.